Hello friends, Glage back with another Punishing Grey Raven guide today, and we're going to be talking about our newest S-rank fire breaker, Kamui Aeternion. Kamui arrives and will be replacing Uncle Watanabe on the meta fire team at its highest level. However, that does come with a notable asterisk. The team composition is a very complicated puzzle with Kamui's arrival. It is the main reason this guide had to be delayed a little bit, as there has been a lot of confusion about what the actual optimal Warzone team is for fire moving forward. However, I have tested quite a bit and gotten advice from some high-end Warzone players, and it does turn out that Lucia, when properly invested, will still give you better results on the fire team than Watanabe himself. Now, I will note that Watanabe is definitely not entirely retired. He will still be useful for the Dark Flow team and will still be useful in Phantom Pain Cage, where you will not want to build up Lucia to get her proper damage output in that mode. You'll just want the boss nuked ASAP. So Watanabe is not completely gone, but for the meta fire team, he will be sitting off the Warzone squad with proper investment. But we'll talk about the complex aspect of the team compositions once we get there. As for Kamui himself, he also arrives with the Plasma Beam elemental effect. Once we get a proper Plasma Beam Warzone, where it is the stronger element, and I can do some real testing and try out the new team compositions and how Kamui's kit works best with that effect, I will do a full Plasma Beam team guide here in the future. This guide is going to focus primarily on Kamui's fire aspect of his kit and the fire team compositions. So, as always, we'll go over all you've come to expect out of my guides. We'll talk evolutions, memory builds, we'll talk Kamui's weapon and his cub, and then we'll go over the big old complex nonsense that the fire team has become with this release of Kamui, and the reason this guide was so delayed. So let's go ahead and get into it. As always, we are going to start with evolutions. I'm going to break guide format a little bit. For whatever reason, the normal evolution menu does not have the percentages on damage increases listed. So for the sake of better clarity and information that you can all read along with, we're going to use the skill menu instead. So I apologize for the slight difference, but I would rather have proper information on screen than have it look a little bit more pretty. So, at S5, using Kamui's signature move, or using his hold dodge attack while in discharge form with 90 output, which is one of his core passive meters, will activate all available QTEs. S5 standard, use the kit, get the QTEs as you move along. At double S, which should be the bare minimum for Kamui, like all S-rank constructs, he will automatically use his QTE anytime he exits the battlefield. When Kamui is on the battlefield, he will continuously activate all available QTEs while Hypermatrix Deduction has been activated by triggering an active matrix. Hypermatrix Deduction, if you need a reminder, is the unique breaker-style matrix proc that they get, so this will just be another way to activate QTEs, which is going to be very important for the fire team, as the QTE spam is a big reason that Lucia is the optimal character moving forward. In addition to all of that, the amount of output and flare points, which are his two main core passive builds that you build up stacks of, will be gained, that you get from using red orbs will be up by 50%, so a notable boost to how quickly you build his core passives. When using his tap yellow while in base form, aka charge form, with at least 60 output built up, the next hold basic while he is in discharge form, which is his secondary form, will grant an additional 60 signature energy. This is notable for getting double ult rotations in quicker and is a nice little bonus to have. Lastly, the damage of his hold yellow skill while he is in charge form and has at least 3 blue orbs to ping is increased by 200%. And this is a attack you will use basically every rotation at least once, so a nice little boost there. At double S3, which has some pretty important buffs on it, Scorching Invasion and Coiled Tempest, these are the shred effects for fire and plasma beam respectively, get a 10% increase for a total of 35%. The base shred on Kamui's elements is 25. SS3 gets you the 10% for a total of 35. While Kamui is on the team, all team members can extend the duration of Hypermatrix by 1 second anytime they use a QTE while it is active. This is going to be notable for keeping Hypermatrix lasting a little bit longer, as QTE spam is going to be the name of the game with this team moving forward. Red and blue orb skills get their base damage increased by 60%. The base damage of the hold basic attack while in discharge mode with 90 flare points, aka Ignited Radiance, gets a base damage increase of 30%. And when using Fusion Slash, which again is the tap yellow while you are in base form with 60 output, will grant 3 signal orbs. This can only happen 1 time per rotation where Kamui comes onto the field. This is what enables his most ideal rotation without deadline timing. So double S3, this last buff especially, is quite notable and is very strong. So something to consider if you are willing to invest some extra rolls in Kamui's banner. At triple S, the shred effects get another 10% increase for a total of 45%. SSS is where the breakers really start going off, so you kind of are going to be familiar with what comes next, but when Kamui is on the team, all members' QTEs can now store up to 2 charges. This is the exact same passive that Rosetta came with when she was introduced, so it appears this will be a breaker standard at triple S moving forward. The character swap cooldown is decreased by 3 seconds. This has been a universal tank triple S passive since the Gen 3 tanks. Nothing changes here. It's very, very good. Obviously, it does not stack with anything if you are using a double tank setup. And lastly, at triple S, the base damage of his signature move and the deployed DOT field that activates after you cast signature both are increased by 50%. At triple S3, 6, and plus, the base damage of the hold dodge attack while in discharge mode and the hold basic attack while in discharge mode with at least 90 flare points is increased by 40%. The extra damage of red and blue orb skills is increased by 200%. And lastly, at triple S plus, the extra damage of Kamui's signature and the deployed DOT field afterward is up by 30%. With the evolutions out of the way, let's talk memory builds. So, I have found this to be the strongest memory build for the Metafire team currently. Kamui is going to pilot with the 4-piece Shakespeare set. You need Shakespeare somewhere on the Fire team, and with the meta setup now moving forward, he is the most ideal candidate to carry it. Kamui's signature set doesn't do that much for him. It does give him some increased damage, especially with the flare points, but that is not enough to override the massive bonus that Shakespeare gives to the Fire team, and Kamui is simply the best character to be carrying this moving forward. You're going to want 2-piece Kadi. This is borderline hard required for getting signature energy up quickly so you can use double ult rotations with this character. He has a very large signature energy bar, so you are going to want Kadi to cut down on that and make sure that you're easily getting 2 signatures off in a single rotation. The strange caveat that I was not expecting but has worked out very well since I implemented it thanks to some advice from other Warzone players is 2-piece Darwin. Kamui absolutely chews through orbs. He is 3-pinging very, very, very often, so it's very easy for him to activate the damage bonus on this, and it's just going to increase his overall output writ large. As for resonances on the memory set, signature move on the bottom, I did experiment with having the breaker skill be a 3-3 split and using the breaker skill in its totality. Signature always came out with better damage. That's just how he is operating right now. I will say if you are operating on a lower investment team and Kamui is acting as a tank, you may get better results using the breaker class skill on the bottom, but that's something you'll have to test. For the most part, just set it and forget it with the signature on the bottom. Any 15 attack up top works fine. As for potential alternative memory builds, I don't see a good reason to build anything else on Kamui right this moment. Now, that being said, if you cannot run the Metafire team and you do need to run Watanabe right now, you could opt to have him hold Shakespeare. You could opt to have Vera hold Shakespeare and continue being the sub DPS. We'll get into the details when we go to the team composition, but if you need a memory set that is absolutely going to function, is going to work for the Fire team long term, and you're not going to get burned on wasting resources, I am very confident in suggesting this exact build moving forward. So do with that information what you will. As always, characters evolve and change. It's always possible there'll be a more optimal set discovered down the road, but right now this is getting pretty killer results for me and other high-end Warzone players for that matter. As for Kamui's weapon, I do unfortunately have to inform you all that he does really, really need his signature weapon. The main reason being that after casting signature, he gets 3 signal orbs, and this can happen twice while Kamui is on the field for each rotation. This helps him get through rotations quicker, it helps activate the buff from Darwin faster, and it's just an overall huge part of his kit. He is very orb hungry. If you want to be efficient with him, you're going to want those extra orbs, and having the signature and having Kamui at SS3 will enable you to do his best rotations without requiring deadline timing, which is pretty notable to have on a tank-style character. So, the good news is that Kamui is not limited. If you can't afford the weapon right now, you can wait and pick it up down the road at any time for the 80% rate up. But if you are intending Kamui to be the lead DPS for your fire team moving forward, you are going to want to pick this up as soon as possible. It's just going to help a lot. Of course, the main appeal of signature weapons, in addition to the bonus it gives him, is the actual excuse me, the actual resonances and harmonizing a memory set. As for the memory or the weapon resonances on Kamui, first and foremost, domain deconstruction. This is a must-have on all your tank characters. It should always be your go-to when you are looking to give a resonance to your tank. Glorious Afterglow is fantastic for Kamui. Again, he is 3-pinging very, very constantly. This is effectively full uptime on Glorious Afterglow for his entire rotation, so it's kind of a no-brainer. Matrix Lightning actually does not perform very well on Kamui due to the nature of how he procs Matrix in his rotations, so I do not recommend using it. If you are going to go the full 3 on weapon resonances, go ahead and use Incandescence. If you are below SS3, and you are wanting to do his more ideal rotation, you will need deadline timing to do that. However, I will have a budget rotation that does not require deadline timing, as if you're an SS player, there's a good chance you're going to have 0 or 1 weapon resonances, and ideally you'd greatly prefer that be domain deconstruction over deadline timing, but I will have some info to apply to both of those potential scenarios, depending on how well your Kamui and your whole fire team is invested. So, with the weapon out of the way, let's talk about Kamui's Cub, Ignis. This continues a string of rather strong Cubs for these recent characters in 2026. As for the active skill, the default skill is what comes with grouping on it. I would recommend leaving this on pretty much all the time, just because grouping is very, very powerful in general. However, if you are operating in Phantom Pain Cage or in a Warzone where it is a single boss enemy per wave, you can swap to the secondary active skill for a little bit extra damage. It's not going to make a huge bit of difference just because that's not where damage really comes from on these characters. But if you want to super min-max when there's only one enemy, feel free to swap to the secondary skill. Otherwise, just set it and forget it. Leave on the main active skill so you can have grouping available. The character-specific skill is quite strong. It is going to reward Kamui for using his base kit he wants to use during his rotations, and gives a strong 25% attack boost for 8 seconds. That is very, very good. So I highly recommend picking up the Cub if you can afford it. For a 5,000 Cub ticket or 5,000 black card investment, you are going to get a pretty notable boost to Kamui's damage. And of course, right now it's on 100% rate up, so if you've got the extra scratch, I definitely recommend doing so. So, with all of those out of the way, what are my investment recommendations for Kamui? So, first and foremost, of course, get him to SS. That's the bare standard for any S-rank construct. 1 copy from the gacha plus your Pain Cage skulls to get the extra 30 shards. That gets you to SS. SS and his signature weapon should be your next highest priority. With those 2 things, he will perform very well on the field. Even if not the most optimal setup, he's still going to do very good damage, and having a breaker on any elemental team, as we have learned from Rosetta already, is really good. The breaker is just a crazy class that is really upping the potential of these teams currently. SS3, as I mentioned, is a very notable upgrade. If you have the extra pulls, I would definitely consider it. And of course, SS is where breakers absolutely go nuts with their passives. Stacking the QTEs is going to be a very important aspect for the true meta fire team, because we're going to want to use Lucia's QTE very often. More on that here in just a second. But if you're going to SS and beyond, you probably don't need my investment recommendations. You're already a spender. You know what you're going after. But in general, SS, then the weapon. The Cub, I think, is not as strong as the SS3 upgrade, but it is also much cheaper to get. The most you're ever going to have to pay for a copy of a Cub is 5,000 Cub tickets and or black cards. A second copy from the gacha is going to cost you up to 15,000 black cards to get to double S3. Depending on where your resources lie, you'll have to make your own decisions about which of those two you want to prioritize more. Do note that we do have a very anticipated and fan favorite character coming up after Kamui, so if you are short on rolls and you are planning on getting that character kitted out, obviously consider that before you do your rolls on any of parts of Kamui's kit, including his weapon and Cub. That may be a notable thing you want to prepare for, and I will not be surprised if our next character is a Philo Tree Nexus character, aka a limited one, so just something to consider before you invest too heavily in Kamui right out the gate, if you aren't a spender especially. So, with all that out of the way, let's go talk about the complex puzzle and the whole reason this guide had to be delayed and completely reworked from the ground up, that being the team compositions. So, the Meta-Fire team composition moving forward, if it is properly invested, is going to be Kamui as the leader, acting as the tank and main DPS for the team. Vera will act as the lead support and will fill downtime between Lucia and Kamui with her ultimate spam. She is going to operate now as the DV holder, proccing all the QTE procs. Her ideal memory setup is going to be 4-piece Da Vinci, 2-piece Guinevere, and harmonized 2-piece Kadi. She needs 2-piece Kadi to be able to do her 1.5, 2, or 2.5 ult rotations, depending on how good you are at parry canceling and how invested your Vera is. But nonetheless, on the meta team, she will become the QTE bot while also maintaining field time. As for the memory resonances, prioritize class skill on the bottom. For the amplifier bonus, any 15 attack up top works fine. As for her weapon and weapon resonances, she actually will need deadline timing if you intend to do 2.5 ultimate rotations. That obviously assumes that you are hitting more or less perfect parry cancels every single rotation. Otherwise, it is not worth going the 2.5 distance. If you do not have the weapon resonances to run deadline timing, you can get away with running a 1.5 ult rotation on Vera. However, for a lot of players, I think deadline timing is simply going to feel more comfortable. Experiment around on if you can get away with it or not, depending on how quickly you are getting through your rotations. But you should prioritize Glorious Spear and Superconducting Axial Ray. Glorious Spear especially. The healing bonus is obviously a nice boon for the whole team that ups everybody's damage. And again, you'll have to decide if you can get away with skipping deadline timing or not. I am finding with my particular setup, I can do that, as I'm often doing 2 full ult rotations for Vera and not doing the 2.5. But again, your mileage may vary. Test out and see what you get. The last member will be Lucia. The reason Lucia is actually still optimal and what threw most content creators for a swerve, myself included upon first pass of testing, is that if you have Lucia at least double S3 is where she gets her passive buff that increases the damage of her QTE by 1,000% after she has used her ultimate one time during the battle. This is what makes Lucia the stronger character on the fire team over running a double tank setup with Watanabe for Warzone specifically. If you do not have Lucia at double S3, it gets a little more complicated. You will have to test and see if running Lucia or running Watanabe or a double amplifier setup gets you better returns on your Warzone runs. At below double S3, Lucia does not get the QTE bomb. That is really what carries the damage of this team. To give you a comparison point for how these two teams worked for me, the way I was playing the team originally was a double tank setup where Watanabe basically never touches the field, and I rotated between Kamui and Vera. I was able to pull about 17 million in the Warzone by doing that. Swapping over to the Lucia-based team and spamming the QTEs bumped my score from about 17.4 up to 20.8 million. So that's over a 3 million increase. That is a lot of scratch. So If you have Lucia well invested, double S3 with her signature weapon, she will be the more optimal character on the fire team moving forward. As for how you will build her, she will maintain her 4-piece signature set. She just needs that for her kit to function. And 2-piece Kadi to make sure she doesn't have any signature energy woes. The name of the game with Lucia in the meta fire team is getting through her rotation as quickly as humanly possible. You do not want her on field any more than she absolutely has to be. That is just a net DPS loss. She boosts this team by doing the QTE bombs, and trust me, the reason that works so well is that we're going to harmonize 2-piece Einstein onto her weapon. With the QTE bombs, this means she is now pinging Einstein, which stacks with the amplifier bonuses, which stacks with Guinevere on Vera, and this is why this team is the meta team that does more damage at the highest end. Now, as I mentioned, this is a high investment demand team. You are going to need Lucia at double S3 with her signature weapon. If you don't have that, you're going to want to alter how you play this team a bit, but again, Lucia might still be stronger than Watanabe in those instances. You will have to test for yourself. If you are doing very short fights, aka Pain Cage or any kind of boss burst mode, then I do recommend go ahead and running Watanabe in place of Lucia. The reason being, you don't want to spend the first part of a Pain Cage fight building up Lucia's first rotation and casting her ultimate so that she can have the QTE damage bonus. It's going to be just faster to get Kamui on the field, have him nuke the boss, and call it a day. So, something to keep in mind there. But this is going to be what the Metafire team looks like at its most optimal. Again, how you build is going to depend on the investment level. This matters for all 3 characters. Kamui can function just fine as the DPS carry, even at double S, as long as he has his signature weapon. So just keep that in mind moving forward. But Vera also, of course, how much you're going to want her on the field is going to depend on how heavily she's invested. Ideally triple S, but she was not a free amplifier, so if you don't have her at that, that's okay. You're just going to have to work with some modified rotations and adjusting how you go through your entire team while the fire team does its Warzone business. But with all this complication and stuff out of the way, well, actually, hold up. Before I move on to the combat demonstration, let's talk potential replacement options if you are lacking these characters or they aren't well built enough. If your Pyro Oath is very low invested or you don't have her available, I would just run the Watanabe build if you have him. You're going to want to swap Vera back to a damage-based set in that case, so I would recommend having her 4-piece Kadi and probably 4-piece Guinevere is going to work just fine. She'll still be able to do all her damage, do 2.5 rotations, but get the full bonus of the Guinevere set. And then you would run Watanabe with his standard 4-piece signature, 4-piece Da Vinci, have him act as the QTE bot. If you need a budget option, you are lacking both Pyro Oath and Watanabe, you can run Bridget as a QTE bot, as a fire tank, and just do a double tank setup. This is going to be not nearly as good, obviously, as having an actual S rank, but in a pinch, it can work fine. Do note that if you do not have Lucia, you cannot slot in Ishmael as a replacement here. If you put Ishmael on this team with Vera and Kamui, you have an amplifier and tank respectively. This means Ishmael cannot observe a class since those roles are already filled. So she will just be a neutral class that is doing nihil damage, aka she's not going to do nothing for this team. So she cannot replace Lucia. She can replace Vera if you do not have Vera well built. You can opt to run Ishmael as the amplifier for the team instead, and then run Lucia or whatever your best option is for the third on this team. But those are your potential budget options if you have them available, if you don't have the main ones available. But now that I've rambled on way too long for this team composition and what got this guide delayed for so long, and let me tell you, I totally understand why everybody looked at this as a double tank team. I thought it was going to work that way too, especially with how quickly Kamui can dispense ultimates. But there's just some real nuance with this team moving forward. Thankfully, Kamui himself, pretty straightforward and fairly easy to pick up. But to really do that, let's go ahead, get into training mode, and go over the combat demonstrations so you can learn how Kamui actually works. All right, so let's go over Kamui's combat kit. He is much simpler and straightforward to pick up compared to our first breaker, Rosetta. His kit is much more blatant and very easy to pilot. He does not have any high demands on execution, and everything flows into one another in very obvious and simple ways. But as always, I'm going to go over every aspect of his kit, how it synergizes with itself, to help give you a better baseline understanding of how he works as a full character, and why the rotations I'm going to show you here in a little bit function the way they do. So, when Kamui comes on the field, he will enter in charge mode. This is his base mode. Every time he comes on the battlefield, he will automatically start in this specific mode. While in charge mode, Kamui has access to only blue orbs that can be pinged manually. His yellow orb is a static orb that is persistent in both of his modes, and he has a very basic core passive gauge in charge mode that is used for the output core passive, which we'll go over shortly. Let's talk about some other basics in the base mode, aka charge mode. His basic attack string does absolutely nothing special. The only thing this will do is build a tiny bit of signature energy, and will eventually build up blue orbs if you complete enough of the string. You will never be using this in any practical situation. There are much better ways to get through Kamui's rotation, and he has no need to spam basics basically anytime ever, but it's there nonetheless. Kamui gets some unique dodge properties while in charge mode. So if you do a dodge while holding a direction or directional input, Kamui will do a short shield charge. This does very minimal damage. However, it can apply the shred aspect of his kit. So there is that. If you do a dodge while standing still, like a neutral on the control stick or your directional inputs, Kamui goes into a short parry stance. If he is attacked during this parry stance, he will automatically do the shield charge as a counter attack. This is going to have no practical purpose for your normal everyday stuff with Warzone or PPC. However, this may be useful in high difficulty mode, stuff like Rapid Pursuit, Babel Tower, anything that has, unique properties where getting hit can be extremely dangerous. This might have some value in that, but for everyday use, this is basically just for style points and to have a cute option as a parry. Unlike Vera, Kamui doesn't have any practical use for parry canceling. His moves flow into each other in a way where parry canceling doesn't get you anything. And the main reason for that is that his orbs are all combo orbs. So let's go ahead and talk about those. So in charge mode, base form, you get access to your blue orbs. This is a 2-part combo set of orbs. They can be stringed back to back. So if I do a blue 3 ping, the icon changes. I do a second blue 3 ping, and you'll see we go back to the original icon afterwards. So this can be done a maximum of 2 times. For however many orbs you ping, you will get 10 output points. So if you do a 3 ping, you will get 30, a 2 ping 20, a single ping 10. The output gauge maxes out at 60 total, so any 2 sets of 3 pings will max you out while you are in charge form. However, I am going to importantly note that unlike recent characters, Kamui's bring-in attack is his blue orb, but it, unlike a lot of recent characters, actually does build core passive gauge upon connecting. So if I do a bring-in, this connects, you'll see we already have half of an output gauge. If I do 1 blue 3 ping, now we have a full output gauge. Pretty simple and straightforward. This does mean you will want to be paying attention when you do your bring-ins with Kamui. You want to make sure he actually does his bring-in attack so that you get that free half of your output gauge, as this is super important for getting in and out of his rotations. The output gauge in general is just used to set up going in and out of his secondary mode known as discharge mode, and there are a few ways to get in and out of that. All of them center around his yellow orb. This orb is persistent between both modes, and it's mainly used to swap between charge mode and discharge mode and vice versa. You won't really use it to swap out of discharge mode. You'll be doing that by casting his ultimate, which also gets him out of discharge mode. But if for some reason you have a snafu in your rotation and you need to get back to base form without ultimate, you can use the yellow orb to go between the 2 more modes as you will. let's show you what exactly the yellow orb can do while we're in base mode. So, if Kamui comes on field and he does not have a maximum output, so if the core passive gauge is not full yet and you tap the yellow orb, Kamui will do a basic slash. This will put him in his secondary mode, aka discharge mode, and will convert all his blue orbs into red orbs. We'll go over discharge mode in a second. I want to talk about some more about how the yellow orb works. Now, if you use the yellow orb as a tap once Kamui has full output, so we have a full output of 60 here on the core passive gauge, this time if we tap the yellow orb, Kamui is going to use his fusion slash technique. This is an enhanced version of the same slash attack I just showed you to swap from charge mode to discharge mode. However, if you do it with full output, what's going to happen is Kamui will do much heavier damage on the slash itself, and he's also going to gain his Sunfire buff. His Sunfire buff gives him hyper armor for the full duration of the buff, and also increases his damage by a whopping 40%. So it is a pretty massive buff to have to tack onto his ultimate. So if we do the tap yellow with full output, you'll see slash goes off, and now there is a red outline along the core passive gauge in discharge mode. This represents the timer on the Sunfire buff. As soon as this runs out, the Sunfire buff expires. It lasts for 10 seconds total, so you need to get done whatever you have planned in a very modest window, mainly getting into his ultimate and casting it before the Sunfire runs out. This is going to be your primary way to enter discharge mode the first time you come on the field. There are exceptions to this for certain investments, but in general, this is going to be your main way to get into his secondary mode and utilize the Sunfire buff for big damage. The other option Kamui has while in charge mode is, instead of tapping the yellow orb, what you can do is hold it down. What's going to happen here is Kamui will immediately enter charge mode, and he will start rapid fire pinging every available red orb he has to build up the core passive gauge. So if we hold this down, Kamui eats every orb available, builds up as much core passive as he can, and then exits this particular attack. This attack will go until either you run out of orbs or the core passive gauge is full. So if you do this with Matrix going on, so if we actually, let me get this out of the way. If we actually bring in and then immediately go into the dodge, you will see, because we are able to do a Matrix ping, we're able to do multiple 3-hit pings of the red orbs. This gives us a full core passive gauge in discharge mode. Holding down the yellow is more or less going to be used for getting to a fast ultimate. It is going to be what you do very commonly for Kamui's second ultimate on his rotations before swapping him off the field. So he will use both the tap yellow and the hold yellow for getting in and out of his base mode into his secondary mode. They both have primary uses. You'll get used to both of them, and they both offer unique ways to get to his ultimate and boost his damage. So before we go over discharge mode in mass, let's go ahead and talk about exactly how everything works. So I'm going to do this mode to get in. In discharge mode, all blue orbs converted to red. As I said earlier, the Sunfire buff goes off if you use the tap at yellow, and we have some new core passive gauges to talk about. So the main core passive gauge is now longer. This is still the output. Output works the same way, manually pinging orbs or pinging them via the hold yellow stance attack will build up the core passive gauge over time. Same concept as before. If you do a 3-ping, you get 30 output. This gauge goes to a maximum of 90 output instead of 60 output while he is in discharge mode. In addition, this number above the sword right here represents flare points. Flare points are another set of stacks Kamui can build by using a certain attack. This will give him a stack number, and if he uses a hold basic attack while in discharge mode, he will consume those stacks, consume stacks of the flare points, boost the damage of his next ultimate. The last part of the core passive gauge down here, this is the thermo points core passive gauge. This will be used for the plasma beam rotation and his plasma beam kit. Again, I'm not going to go over plasma beam in this guide because I'm going to need to do some serious testing, do some figuring out of what those rotations look like and what the team compositions look like. But just note, this will represent the thermo points. Those are built the same way as output points are. They will just relate to plasma beam effects instead of regular fire effects. In discharge mode, again, the blue orbs become red. The red orbs are also a combo orb. However, the red orbs are a full 3 combo orb. So instead of truncating it 2, we can do a 3 ping into a 3 ping into one more 3 ping for a full 3-hit combo setup. Each of these will build flare points, output, and thermo points. So pretty straightforward. Manually pinging orbs will give you all of your gauges, but we need to talk about how this works if you opt to not use the tap yellow, but instead use the hold yellow to get into discharge mode. So if we bring Kamui in, when he does the hold yellow in discharge, if he has a full gauge of output after using the stance mode, he can then cancel that into a hold dodge attack. This will do a rising slash, consume all of the 90 output Kamui has gained, and grant him 90 flare points. Once Kamui has 90 or more flare points, he gains access to a hold basic attack in discharge mode. What this will do is this will cause him to do a double slam, consume the flare points, and with those flare points consumed, now his ultimate will do bonus damage. Every flare point you consume buffs the damage by 0.25% up to a maximum of 45. To get the maximum 45, you would need a total of 180 flare points. For common use situations and basic rotations, you're going to be shooting for 90 flare points and nothing else. How all these flow together to get a fast ultimate is that when we bring Kamui in, so if we go in, hold yellow, cancel this into the hold dodge for the flare points, then we can cancel into the hold basic. This gets us all the signature energy we could ever need, and that lets us cast Kamui's signature. Kamui's signature will always be the same type of effect. It doesn't have like a full animation and a slower or a fast animation. The only thing that changes is the amount of damage depending on how many flare points you've consumed before using it. And anytime you use the ultimate, Kamui will automatically swap back into basic charge mode. So something to note there, that you will always come back to the base mode after you ultimate, as is the case with most characters. So let's go ahead and talk about one more thing here. So if you are in discharge mode and we are manually pinging orbs, when we have a set amount of flare points built up, if you tap yellow in this mode to go back to charge mode while you have a bunch of thermal points built up, you can consume thermal points to help activate the plasma beam effect. Again, in base fire stuff, there will be no reason to utilize this. It won't do anything for you, but this will be a key aspect of using the plasma beam rotation going forward, almost certainly. I'll find out for sure once I do the plasma beam guide, but I just wanted to note that you can use the tap yellow to consume flare points and help activate the beam effect and build the magnetic charge gauge that is part of the plasma beam effect. So that is effectively the entire kit for Kamui. It is very, very simple and straightforward. Build up output, get into his discharge mode, utilize that mode for either a slower ultimate that's been buffed by the flare points or a more rapid route to the ultimate that skips the flare points. The basic run of play with Kamui is going to be coming in, getting the Sunfire buff, doing an ultimate, and then using the hold yellow to do a fast ultimate. So the neat thing about that hold dodge attack I told you about in discharge mode, if we go into this and I hold dodge, you will see this gives us ultimate basically immediately, like right out the gate. This builds a ton of signature energy if you have a full output gauge. This becomes very useful because this allows Kamui to do very fast ultimates for his second rotation. So if we bring Kamui in and we do our standard route, so we're pinging orbs manually, we hold basic to consume the flare points, and then we do an ultimate, we're going to have not near as many orbs on this second run because we used a bunch the first time. So if we hold down this and then hold the dodge, you'll see I can cancel the hold dodge attack and just immediately go into the ultimate. This is very important to note because this is going to be useful for situations where, let's say you're near the end of a Warzone run and you're not going to have time to do your full ultimate. This lets you get to a faster ultimate that's not going to do as much damage, but obviously gets there very, very quickly. And it will be a technique that's used in pretty much any of his rotation options. But other than that, That is pretty much the entire kit. Kamui is really, really straightforward and simple to pick up. He flows very easily, and his execution is not demanding whatsoever. So, with all of that in mind, let's go ahead and look at some rotations. I'm going to have a budget rotation, a rotation that's the optimal one if you're building the meta fire team, and then I have the front end of a Warzone I ran to show you how the entire team flows if you are able to build the meta fire team with its heavy investment requirements. So let's go ahead and go take a look at those. All right, so let's go over some sample rotations. Kamui's rotations by himself are very short, very simple, very easy to enact. I'm going to do a budget rotation, a more optimal rotation, and then I'm going to show you the first part of a Warzone run to kind of go over the entire fire team rotation if you are able to build the meta squad. I figure that's the best way to do this after delaying the guide for so long. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm calling this the budget rotation. This is going to be for if your Kamui is below SS+3 and you cannot run deadline timing. If you can run deadline timing, you'll be able to do the next rotation I show you, as long as you also are using Lingya on the member who comes in before Kamui. It would be Vera in almost every situation. But if you do not have deadline timing, don't have SS+3, then this is going to be an easy budget rotation you can use at SS as long as you have his signature weapon. This does unfortunately require the signature weapon to work, but right now I haven't really found a not scuffed rotation that you can do without the signature weapon. If any of y'all have one that feels decent, let me know. I'm happy to add that down in a pinned comment. But let's go over this real quick. It's pretty straightforward. So a basic budget rotation. So what we're going to do, we bring Kamui in, and we're going to immediately go into the hold yellow. So hold yellow, charge up all the orbs. We're going to consume all of them. This will get us our full core passive gauge. From here, we're going to hold dodge to do the rising slash that builds up our flare points. So hold dodge, we get our 90 flare points. Once you are done with that, hold basic to do the slam attack and consume all the flare points. And then cast ultimate. Then we're going to do a very quick second ultimate. So as soon as we come out of this, start holding yellow. There is a slight delay before it'll let you do an input. So just note, if you try to hold yellow before Kamui has kind of fully landed in his kind of action hero pose, it won't register it. You need to delay ever so slightly before you start holding yellow again. But nonetheless, hold yellow, consume as many orbs as you've got. And from here, immediately start holding dodge. As soon as you see ultimate light up, you can let it rip. You don't need to go into the hold basic because you don't have enough core passive gauge to get the flare points. We just want to let the ultimate rip and then swap Kamui out. That's it. That's literally all there is to it. Very, very easy budget rotation. Very simple. If you're SS, I would recommend using this as a starting point. And then, of course, feel free to experiment with other routes based on what I'm showing you here. But as a budget rotation, this will get you off the ground pretty quickly. So one time we'll go through in real time, as I always do. I'll commentate each individual part, put the annotations off to the side so you can practice. But this one won't take you long to get down, I promise. So, budget rotation for Kamui, at least SS and signature weapon. Swap in, hold yellow, hold dodge, hold basic, ultimate. Out of the ultimate animation, hold yellow, hold dodge, ult as soon as it's available. And then swap to your next character. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Doesn't get much easier than that. Spoilers, the optimal rotation isn't much more difficult. So let's go take a look at what I am currently using for my Kamui in the Metafire team rotation and what you can basically utilize as long as you either have deadline timing and a Vera willing to use Lingya to pass on an extra orb, or if you have Kamui at SS+3 or higher. All right, so let's go over a more optimized rotation. This is what I am currently using in my Warzone runs. It has gotten me fantastic results in terms of the kind of scores I'm able to put up with the Metafire team, and it's very, very simple to pick up. Not much harder than the budget rotation I just showed you. Again, to use this rotation, you need to either be a SS3 or higher so that you get the passive where you build orbs for using tap yellow with a full output gauge. Or you can do this same rotation at SS. It will require you to have deadline timing on your weapon, and you will need to have Vera use a 3-ping before you bring Kamui in the field, and have the Lingya Cub equipped so she can pass on an extra orb to Kamui for this to work. So there are a couple ways you can do it, but I just recommend getting this to SS3 if you want to utilize this rotation. Once you're SS3, this is guaranteed and very, very easy to do. So let's go through it. Basic idea here. Instead of holding the yellow and getting the fast route, we're going to manually pig orbs to build up the output gauge, use the fusion slash so we get the sunfire buff active and really juice the damage of our first ultimate, and then the second ultimate is just a quick one. So same concept, we're going to bring Kamui in, we're going to immediately do a blue 3-ping to get ourselves our full output gauge. Then from here we can go ahead and tap the yellow orb. This will cause the fusion slash to go out. And then from here, we are going to do 2 red 3-pings, just enough to fill the core passive gauge full with output. So we do red 3-ping, red 3-ping. As soon as the second red 3-ping has gone off, you can go ahead and start holding basic. This will consume the flare points and do the slam. And as soon as that's over, go into the ultimate. The second ultimate's going to be just like the last time. Immediately hold down yellow, hold down dodge. As soon as ultimate's available, let it rip. It's that simple. This is all you need to have Kamui doing big boffo damage in Warzone. It's very simple, very straightforward, and has been highly, highly effective for me personally. So let's go through it one time in real time. I'll commentate, put the annotations off to the side, but Kamui rotation, what I have found to be pretty optimal at SS3 and higher, or at SS with deadline timing and with a Lingya Cub on the prior unit, it would ideally be Vera. So let's go. Swap in, blue 3-ping, yellow, 2 red 3-pings, hold basic, ultimate. Out of the ultimate animation, hold yellow, hold dodge, ult as soon as it's available. Swap to your next attacker. There is your basic optimization rotation for Kamui as long as you're SS3 or higher. This is what I recommend using to get a feel for the character. This will do you very, very well in any Warzone situation and probably works fine for PPC as well, although I would recommend experimenting with faster ultimates for PPC. So one last thing we're going to look at here, I'm going to queue up an actual Warzone run I did earlier to show you how the fire team works all the way around so you can get used to this new meta output. All right, so I'm going to go over the rotation I'm currently using with the Metafire team to get my Warzone results. It has been very, very effective for me. As you can see, I was able to hit almost 21 million with this particular set of rotations. I do want to note this is not the only routing you can use for the Metafire team if they're invested well enough to run this squad. There are a bunch of ways I've seen people do this. This is just what has been working best for me. So as always, feel free to experiment, try different routings, figure out what works best for you and your teams based on the investment level, but I wanted to go through and show how I'm doing this. So how I like to do this is start with Vera and then get Lucia on the field early so she can go through an ultimate and get her QTE buff active and have it active for the majority of the war zone. So pretty simple, straightforward. We start off Vera, blue 3-ping, use her ultimate, go in, red 3-ping, and then hold basic, do the double dodge cancel to speed up her hold basic. And the reason I go ahead and do a quick rotation with Vera here is the first enemy waves have so little health, it's kind of a waste to let Kamui and Lucia do the dirty work on things that Vera can clear very, very easily and in very minimal time. So that's why I do a single ult rotation with Vera, but from here we're going to go ahead, swap to Lucia. Her first rotation is going to be very similar to her old opener. Since we don't have enough red orbs to just spam it to get into her ult mode, what we're going to do is bring her in, tap basic once, and then hold down ultimate to go into flight mode. From here, we're going to spam red pings until the stat counter gets to 9. At this point, we're going to tap basic, and here's where you have to alter your muscle memory a tad. Since this is normally where you would hold ultimate to do the fast ult, we don't need to do that anymore. We are only doing single ult rotations with Lucia now in this new meta fire team. So make sure you tap ultimate to go into the Eclipse mode ultimate. From here, hold down basic and just tap your ultimate button for when it immediately comes online. You want to use it the very second it's available. And then from here, we swap to Kamui. Kamui, we do the exact rotation I just showed you. Blue 3 ping, yellow, 2 red 3 pings, hold basic, ultimate, very straightforward. And then we do the fast ultimate after his first ultimate. Hold yellow, hold dodge, ultimate. His rotation never changes. You do this every single time he comes on the field. Super straightforward. So, Vera's second time in. This is where things are going to require you to get a feel and kind of have an internal clock in your head on how well you are piloting Vera's rotation. Nothing changes. She still uses her rotation with the dodge cancels that she's used in the prior fire teams, but how many rotations you do is going to depend entirely on how good your parry cancel, dodge cancel, whatever you want to call it, is in that specific rotation. If you feel like all your dodge cancels were as quick as possible, very smooth and clean, you can do up to a 2.5 ultimate rotation for Vera if you're using deadline timing. If you're not using deadline timing, you're not going to be able to go that far. So just keep that in mind, and, you know, depending on what you want to do with Vera's resonances, if you have one available to put DLT on, all that good stuff. But in this particular run, I feel very good about my rotation, so I'm going to do a 2.5 rotation. You'll want to adjust. I'll show you my measurement for how I know if I can get away with it. But same thing, Vera comes in, blue 3 ping, ultimate. 1 red 3 ping, hold basic. Do your double dodge cancel to speed up the hold basic. Cast ultimate. From here, 2 blue 3 pings, ult again. And then we do red 3 ping, dodge, red 3 ping, hold basic, double dodge cancel, ultimate. Now, this is where you have to make your judgment call on, can I fit in the 0.5 extra rotation here and not cost Kamui any notable field time? How I tend to eyeball this is if I see I still have more than a quarter of the cooldown remaining for the swap. Keep in mind my Kamui is SS, so I have the shorter swap cooldown. But if there's less than if there's more than a quarter left, I feel comfortable letting the 0.5 rotation rip. So I'm going to go ahead, do one more blue 3 ping, do ultimate, and then immediately swap to Lucia from here. So Lucia, for her second time and on for the rest of the run, is going to just spam red orbs to get through her ultimate modes and get off of the field as quick as possible. You want Lucia to go through her rotation as quick as humanly possible. The longer she's on the field, the more your team just lose DPS. Her damage comes from her QTE power-up. We're just trying to get to the Eclipse ultimate and be done ASAP. So bring Lucia in, tap red orbs until you get to 9 stacks, and then hold down ultimate to enter flight mode. From here, spam red orbs until ultimate lights up. Tap ultimate, make sure you don't hold, so you're getting the Eclipse ultimate. In Eclipse mode, hold down basic, mash on your ult button as soon as it's available. The Eclipse ultimate goes off. And we're back to Kamui. Kamui repeats his rotation for the rest of the run, and so do the other two. You will do the exact same rotation for Vera and Lucia the rest of the run. Again, the only variable is going to be how good were your dodge cancels with Vera. Can you fit a 2.5? Do you need to cut it down to a 2 or even a 1.5? That'll be something you'll have to experiment with and get a feel for. But I will go ahead and we'll go through this in real time. I'll do the commentary and put the annotations off to the side. It's going to be a bunch of extra work, but this guide was delayed this long. We might as well do it right. You know what I mean? So fire team rotation that I have designed that's working the best for me. Again, feel free to experiment and modify the ordering and the routing to make it work better for your teams, but this is going to get you competitive Warzone scores that I am very certain of. So, Vera as the starter, blue 3 ping ultimate, red 3 ping hold basic, double dodge, ultimate, swap to Lucia. Basic attack, hold ultimate, red 3 pings till 9 stacks, tap basic, tap ultimate, hold basic, ultimate as soon as it's available. Swap to Kamui. Blue 3 ping, yellow, 2 red 3 pings. Hold basic to spin the flare points. Ultimate. Out of the ultimate animation, hold yellow, hold dodge, ult as soon as it comes up. swap to Vera. Blue 3 ping ultimate. Red 3 ping hold basic, double dodge cancel, ultimate. Blue 3 ping times 2, ultimate. Red 3 ping dodge, red 3 ping, hold basic, double dodge cancel, ultimate. If you were crisp, do a 0.5 ultimate with blue 3 ping into ult, swap to Lucia. Spam red until 9 stacks, hold ultimate. Spam red again until ult available, tap ultimate, hold basic, ult as soon as it's available. Swap to Kamui, repeat for the rest of the run. That's it. That's how I got my Warzone score. This should be very effective for you if you can field the meta fire team. Again, feel free to experiment at your leisure to figure out what works best for you. But this is getting me hyper competitive scores with people of similar investment ranks. So that's going to do it for the rotations. This is finally done. Let's go wrap up this guide so I can stop looking at recording and video editing software before I actually lose my mind. All right, well, that's going to put a wrap on Kamui's guide. As mentioned earlier, myself and basically every single guide maker got pretty schmixed on this character. Kamui's ability to dispense rapid multiple ultimates with Kadi really made it seem like that just doing ultimate spam with him and Vera and having Watanabe as a QTE bot was going to be the way to go for the fire team. And then Lucia showed up, kicked the door down with her pocket ICBM that is her freaking enhanced QTE, and basically caused me to rewrite this entire guide. So, as mentioned, the team compositions were a bear to try and figure out. I'm very thankful to the people in my guild and some of the Warzone community for explaining why things turned out the way they did and giving me a chance to put out a guide with all of that information instead of just vomiting what I had found in a short amount of time that would have ultimately been less than optimal. This does call into question whether or not I want to wait on guides moving forward and just do them after the patch drops. That's going to be a discussion for another time. I frankly don't want to think about it right now because I have been doing a whole lot of work on PGR stuff. Nonetheless, regardless of what version of the fire team you're building, you're going to want Kamui on it. Breakers are changing the landscape of what's actually possible in both Warzone and PPC, and Kamui's going to be doing a lot of work for a long, long time coming forward. I also think they did an excellent job capturing his aloof and playful nature while maintaining the feeling of weightiness and heavy strikes that he is known for with his original frames. I think they did an awesome job on the design with that. He feels like he hits hard, and, well, he does hit hard, but I think that's a really important aspect that we don't get a lot of in very many frames. A lot of characters are designed to be fast and furious, to really, you know, give that dopamine of going, you know, beyond human speed and such. But I think this is a nice balance that makes Kamui still feel like he is swinging a really big-ass sword, but makes him still feel like a modern PGR character that can get through his kit in pretty good succession. So bravo to the design team. I think they did an excellent job with this newest version of Kamui. And I know all you Kamui fans out there are finally eating good after an absurdly long wait. So I hope you're enjoying it as much as I have so far. As mentioned, thank you for the patience on this guide. I just would not have felt right putting out what I knew at that point was going to end up being suboptimal info. And as mentioned, it's got me questioning my route for making guides moving forward. I'll figure that out another day. Maybe I do a video and ask y'all's input on that. We'll see what's going on. I am trying to facilitate some things that might make testing future characters a little bit easier, but I have to hear back from the content creation liaisons and find out if that's even going to be an option. But we'll worry about that down the road. So, all of that said, I'm ready to be done here because, friends, I am so tired of staring at my videos editing software. If you have not watched it yet, please, please, please check out the Evernight Beat lore video. That was a massive undertaking that took well over 100 hours of my own personal time and effort. and I would really love y'all to check it out. Give me your thoughts and feedback on it. It would mean a lot to me if you could share that around. I know my lore videos are never going to do the kind of numbers and reach that the guides and the general PGR day-to-day stuff is going to get, but I've never worked that hard on a project in my entire life that was just me doing something I want to do. So if you've got some time and could check it out, it would really mean a lot to me. I would super, super appreciate it. So all of that said, I need a damn break. I desperately need a break from staring at PGR. So I'm going to take a little breather, get used to how Kamui works, and, doing my weeklies and dailies, checking out the new stuff that's in this patch, because I haven't had a chance to do anything with it other than work on this guide. And if there's anything that I missed or needs corrected, I will do a pinned comment for that down below. So if you notice anything that still seems off, even with the updated information, thanks to the Warzone testing, let me know. I'm always happy to update things down there. So once I catch my breath, I will do a leap guide for Hong Ying and some other videos that I had to back burner last patch to finally get that lore video done and finished. So, and many other fun projects coming soon, but let's catch our breath and one step at a time, As always, I appreciate all. If you want to do the YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, it's always appreciated. It's never necessary. If you want to support me directly for making my guides and the other various PGR videos I make, I have a Patreon. It's down in the description. If you want to check it out, it's only $1 a month for the basic tier. Nothing's ever paywalled of my content. There's nothing that's Patreon exclusive or anything like that. But if you want to get access to videos a little earlier and not have to deal with YouTube ads, it's an option for you. But anyway, that's enough for me. Y'all take care. Be good to each other. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.